Join me on a fascinating journey where I show you some of the techniques used in scale aeromodelling. Hello again modellers, we're back in the workshop and we're still working on the Blackburn monoplane. I will be glad when this is done, and we've hit 20 episodes on it already, so I think we're getting close to the end now. So what I want to look at today is something that I find a lot of fun, and detailing is a lot of fun. I mean, that's the bit of aeromodelling that I really enjoy. So what I'm going to do today, what I'm going to show you, is I'm going to add this padding around the cockpit, and I'm going to do the front edge. You can see I've already drilled the holes ready to take the stitching where we sew this fake leather beading around the edge. Now it's foam filled on the full size. Well, it's filled with something, I don't know what it is. If you do know, please put something in the comments as to what they pad it with. What I'm going to use will become clear as we go along. But so that's what we're going to look at. We're going to do the coaming, the padded coaming around the cockpit, and this is to offer some protection to the pilot should he have to arrive suddenly and the aircraft stops rather abruptly. So without further ado, let's see how we're going to make this. So first of all, let me show you what I did to make this to make these holes and get it so accurate. I used a short length of silicone tubing. Now if you recall, we used some 3mm, well probably 2.5mm, I can't remember exactly now, tubing to form the tail surfaces, the outline of the tail surfaces. And I've used a section of that silicone, there we go, struggling to find it, a section of that silicone with little graduations on it. I slit the silicone so that I could slide it over the aluminium, the lith plate. I can't remember where the join is there, or the slit. There it is. I just slide it back on. So all I've done is run a scalpel blade down through the tube to put a slit along one side, and then I positioned it on the lithoplate, and this sets the distance, because I'm actually going to use this silicone tubing as the padding in this cushioned coaming. So these are positioned 1/8 of an inch apart, and then there's a little pen line, and as I just moved it around and then marked the lithoplate accordingly. So these holes are just outside the tubing and at the spacing as denoted by the tubing. I just used that as a measuring stick. So that's how I marked all of these holes with a pen. Now to drill them, I've got a very nifty little tool. This came from the States, but I'm sure there's lots of them available over here. The IPMS guys use, the indoor plastic scale static models use these things, and it's a rotary tool, and you can alter the speed, and it spins usually a little sanding pad on the end of a stick, and it's great for sanding things. You know, that's what it's for, and this does spin quite nicely. So let me just run it up and you'll see. And it runs very true, and it allows you to drill tiny little holes very, very accurately. And that's exactly how I drilled all of these holes, and I got the spacing just right. As you can imagine, when you drill into aluminium sheet like this without a punch hole, you know, without a mark to drill it, it could go anywhere. But this little tool did it for me perfectly. So I think they're available over here in the UK. As I say, the plastic static model guys use them. Right, so what I'm going to do first is I think I'm going to end up having to glue the material I'm going to cover this in on the inside. So first of all, I'm going to put some UHU-POR all the way around the inside edge of that. And the way I'm going to do it should work. I've not done this before, but I've been thinking about how difficult it was when I did the test piece on that side. And all I'm going to use is a cotton bud, and I'm going to coat the cotton bud in POR, and then I'm just going to try running that around the inside of the coaming, and hopefully that's applying a nice smear of Yoo-hoo Pour all the way along the inside of there. The holes are acting as a guide because you know the covering that I'm going to put on top won't go any further back than the holes. And the Yoo-hoo Pour isn't the only way that this material is going to be retained. As you'll see in a minute, it all becomes quite clear. Now I shouldn't need any on the outside, but I'm going to do it anyway. So we'll do the same on the outside edge. Again, I'm not going to go beyond the holes because the material I'm attaching should terminate at that point. This seems to be working quite well. Putting a nice thin smear on there. It's fairly easy to clean the excess off. Just rub it off with your finger once it sets. So that's that bit done. Right, so we've got Yoo-hoo Pour on the inside and the outside of that section there. Now let's go and find some silicone tube. This is the tubing that we used for the aluminium structure, and I've got several different sizes of the stuff. This is the one I'm going to use. It's 2mm. So this is 2mm tubing. So all I'm going to do is cut length enough to go from the midpoint to the end there. And I'll cut one for the other side as well while I'm at it as well. So that's those two. And all I do with this is I put the scalpel blade inside the tube and then I run it from one end to the other. Just like that. That tubing then can be slid over the litho plate. You might wonder why I've split it at the top. Full-size Blackburn monoplane, the material is in two sections and it splits at the middle. So I'm going to do it in two pieces. As is always the way, it's too long. I'd rather have it too long than too short. And some of that glue has actually held it as well, so I'm going to do the other side as well while I'm at it. Now you might remember back in the Flair puppeteer days in the 70s and 80s, if we built the baronets and this sort of stuff, quite often we would use just the normal 1/4 inch fuel tubing, silicone fuel tubing, and we'd slit it like this and we'd run it in exactly the same way, and that's how we would make our padded coaming. So this is very similar, it's just I'm using a much finer tubing. I would normally have used foam for this. I would have just glued a very thin piece of foam all the way around. Then I would have covered the foam. On the full size it's covered in a leatherette sheath. But on this model we're not going to use leather. And I've already alluded to what we might use when we did the seat. There we go. Let's just work it along a little bit because it's a little bit of a gap. we go. So what we're going to cover it in, what we're going to wrap over this, is actually some of that vector board, this paper thin vector board that we cushioned the seat with. And all I'm doing is cutting a strip about, well, fairly wide, and probably too wide really. We probably need a lot less than that, but we'll go with it. And all I'm going to do is lay that on top of the glue, and I'm going to curve it to get the line just right. So let's put some Yoo-hoo pour on this. There we go. I've actually covered all of one side, not just the edges, but all of it. Just bring the camera in a little closer so you can actually see what's going on. So I'll try and do the side closest to the camera first, which is actually going to be the hardest one. Just let this flash off a little bit more. And then I'm going to attach it right along that line of dots. Pushing it down as I go. Now again, apologies if this isn't very easy to see, it's even harder for me to see, I can assure you. And let me just turn it over so I can see what I've done. Yep, I think that's okay. Now I just need to, let me just turn it on its side for this bit. In fact, it might be easier on its side. So let's just cut that a bit short. So that's stuck down now. I'm just going to run my fingernail along the edge just to make sure that I've got it about right. I want the line to be defined so I can actually see where the tubing, the silicone tubing and the edging is. That's pretty good. So we'll go back on the right way up. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn it inside. And then I'm going to glue it up against the inside of the coaming. Remember, we put glue on the inside and we put glue on the all over the vector board. So we just wrap it round. Trying not to go just there. There. I'm going to cut that bit off the end there. There we go. So now I think you can see that we've got this lovely radiused section now. Let me turn it around so you can see it from the other side. See, it's beautifully radiused. Now you're going to say, why are the holes there? On the full size, this leatherwork is actually stitched to retain it on the aircraft. It's not glued with Yoo-hoo pour on the full size, funnily enough. So what we're going to do is actually use thread. and stitch it all the way through. And I'm going to go and find some black thread and a needle. We have a needle, we have some thread. So the hardest bit of this exercise is actually threading the needle. It's always the way, isn't it? I've got a handy dandy little tool for doing it. Which makes it so much easier. Right. So all we need to do, start from one end, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a knot in the end, probably a double knot. I'd love to know how dressmakers tie those great big knots that they get in the end. Somehow they tie a knot that really is much bigger than a normal knot. I never seem to be able to do it. Anyway, so there we go. So all I'm going to do, and this could be a bit fraught, is I'm going to try and find the holes. And of course they're not going to be particularly easy to see. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this light down. I'll put the light on, and what that's doing is it's shining through from this side, and I can see the hole on the other side. And there to prove it, pushing the thread through. That's the first one done. And then all we've got to do is just go all the way along, finding the holes. It's not quite so easy going the other way. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to use a pin from the inside to make the holes on the outside so that I know where I'm going. Struggling to see that one. I can see the hole on the inside, but pin doesn't seem to want to go through it. There we go. Now I'm only going to go that far for now, and the reason being I'm going to have to rotate the fuselage to continue poking the holes to keep it so that the light's shining on it. But you'll get the idea, and then I'll do the rest off camera. So all I do now, again, this is very difficult to do the way round I am doing it, because I can't actually see the other side. Got to be careful of the elevator cables, they run through there. Pull that one tight, not tight, but put a little bit of tension on it. We go out the next one. I think you get the idea. what you have to keep doing is cleaning the end of the needle, because it picks up the yoo-hoo pore as it goes through. It just sticks to the end of the needle. It's a lot of effort, I know, and a lot of you are going, oh, why the hell going to all this trouble? Well, this is what I enjoy. This is what I really like. This is simulating the full size as much as I can. And this is a little tiny indoor model, so this is crazy to be able to do all this detail on an indoor model. The whole time I'm doing this, I'm thinking about how I'm going to do the turnbuckles on the rigging, because that looks like it's going to be quite difficult. See, it's all very well adding the rigging, and that's fairly easy, but the turnbuckles are so tiny. A great modelling friend, George Kandelakis, who lives in, I think he's living in Germany at the moment, but he's originally from Greece. He's built a rather splendid Avro 504N, and it's beautiful. It's a real work of art. And he's added all the turnbuckles, and his is at a much tinier scale than this. And I really do need to ask him how he's done it. And we just keep going along, stitching all of these. Using the light to highlight where the holes are from the inside of the fuselage. So that's as far as I've marked the holes. So I shall keep doing these. And then we'll come back once I've stitched them all on. Very therapeutic. So there you go, I've gone all the way across the top, all the way to there. So we've just got the other side to do now. But what I did find was much easier to use was a torch. And I shone the torch inside, and I didn't have to shine it upwards or anything like that, but just the act of shining it inside the cockpit showed the holes on the outside. And from the outside I could do the same. So it was fairly easy to find the holes. And I used a pin first to really clearly mark them and label them. Then I used the needle. So what I'm going to do is cut another piece of this vector board, and I've got the offcut here, which shows me the width. That was the extra bit. So I thought it was going to be too wide, but actually the width is just about perfect. So we'll cut another one for this side, cover it in glue. This is already glued. And then we'll apply it, and then we'll stitch this side. If I can find the vector board. There's our next section of vector board. So I'm just going to cover it in yoo-hoo pore. Quite a liberal coating, didn't need that much. But scrape a lot of it off. There we go. Unstick it from my finger. Of course, loads of it's coming out now. So we'll just let that flash off a bit. I'll see if I can move the camera around so you can see what's going on this side. Okay, so I think that's as good a view as you're going to get. Let's add this to this side. So should be a little bit easier this time to follow the curve of this, keep it nice and tight. Yes, it makes a difference to be able to actually see what you're doing. Having said that, you can't get too close to the drilled holes because you obviously need some of it to overlap so that you can actually put thread through it. On the full size, the thread is right up against the tubing, so I'm a little bit out on this one. There we go. So then all we've got to do is now fold that inside and stick it to the inside surface. Which is absolutely, which it's sticking perfectly. All you got to do is just press the two bits together, and the pour, because it's a contact adhesive, is doing its job. So now we've got that glued all the way around there. All we need to do now is the sewing trick again. So let's get the torch and a pin, and if we glow inside, I don't know whether you can actually see that, but I can see the holes. Ow! Ow, ow, ow. Pins are sharp, got to be careful. Right, so that's all the holes marked out. Now we just do the threading. I'll keep the torch ready because it does help. Sometimes it's just as easy just to feel your way. See what I mean there? I just found it straight away without doing the difficult somersaults, peering over and under. Oops! Got to go slowly and steadily. This stitching has the advantage of actually holding this material down as well, so you don't have to rely on the glue. Should the glue get old and tired, this shouldn't let go. Saying that, first time this thing hits the wall, I think it's going to be absolutely a million pieces. Not designed to survive a hard landing, that's for sure. Oh dear, that tore the foam. That's because there's pore on the outside of the needle and it just grabbed it. That's a shame. There's nothing I can do about that now, that's it. It's gonna, and it'll show through a little bit on the paint. We're going to cover this in paint to give us the black finish. That's a bit of a shame. I think actually I'm going to terminate that one there. Yeah, there isn't another hole, so we'll just terminate that there. Just going to make sure it's taut and that all those little loops are snug. Pull it down across the cockpit. And I'm just going to tack it just there. Actually, I'm not going to use Kicker. Kicker dissolves the pore, and I don't want that to happen. And there we have the coaming, all attached. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to get a fine brush, paint that all black. And I've got to do the inside as well. Real nuisance about that little bit there. Never mind. I'm going to use flat back, just flat black for this. You can already see the kind of effect you're going to get. The stitching's not really seen, but you get the hint that it is there. Now if you get any on the lift plate, don't worry, because the lift plate's polished, it scratches off, the paint scratches off once it's dry anyway. It's fairly easy to remove. I'm right-handed, so doing it with my left hand is not easy. But obviously if I use my right hand, you won't be able to see it on the camera. I'm going to fudge it a little bit and actually fill that little area in there with black. Just hides it a little bit. Real nuisance that I did that. Messed up. There we go. So I've just got to do the inside, which is actually not too bad, but I'll probably pick it up and hold it so I can maneuver it a little bit better. You get the idea. So we'll come back once that's all painted and I'll show you the effect that we've got. So there we are. There's the finished coaming or cushioning. I've just put a satin finish onto the black, and it's drying, so it's still wet. So if it looks a bit like it's wet, it is wet. Okay, so that's that bit done. Next thing I'm going to look at is probably these fuel filler caps before I forget, and I'm avoiding painting it, but I'm running out of things to do that don't involve painting it. Okay, so if you've enjoyed that video, please click like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.